All right, peace and blessings. Wednesday, October the 3rd, the year 2018. Two documents have been recently posted to Free Lazor's webpage. If you go to his webpage, go to yearofjubilee.com, go to more and click on Free Lazor. If you scroll down to the bottom, we've got quite a bit of documents for him. There's one called the Case History Update and the other one called Witness Info related to Free Lazor. Both of these documents have recently been provided by Ken Massat, who is a friend of Free Lazor's, and I'm going to read both of them into YouTube. So if you're interested in the case of Free Lazor, here's a couple of documents that may be important to keep up with the case. Info on witnesses, and also you can download these documents directly from Year of Jubilee. So if you don't want to hear me read them, you want to read them yourself, just go to the website, go down to the bottom of Free's page, and you can download both of these PDF documents. Info on witnesses to Lazor's case per Lazor. This info is based on personal memory of PF Free Lazor regarding two key witnesses that could have resulted in his freedom if he had been given a proper defense attorney. It is a sad reminder of what can happen with a weak defender. This is the story regarding the two witnesses for Lazor's case. Joan Bingesner, now Miss Harper, number 1, and Donna Fernandez, number 2. Witness number 1. 1. Joan was the woman on the phone with me when Allred, assailant who was shot, was kicking down my bedroom door, and then when his meat cleaver severed the phone cord and disconnected us. Number 2, and that her name was Joan Beingesner, Bingesner. Number 3, when we got to trial about 8 months later, her name had changed from a marriage, Harper. Number 4, Joan heard Allred yelling, but she couldn't tell what, because the door hadn't yet been bashed open and due to the pounding noise which she testified she heard. 5. Joan also said she heard another voice, which I took to mean not Allred's voice and not mine, as I was essentially continuously talking to her in a panic, telling her as best I could what was occurring, that I was under attack, and was breathlessly spurting out requests for her to call the police. My last words with hers interspersed were, "P.F. Please call the police. Joan, give me the address and I will. P.F. 16935 Rober." As the door flew open here, and jarred me so shockingly that I literally lost 1 or 2 split seconds in consciousness, just as my last word was cut off mid-word. Roberts Road, heard only as Robber. His meat cleaver came swishing through the door so fast I didn't know what it was, till I learned later, but I could tell it was something very threatening to my life. Number 6, obviously Joan would have been a prime witness for me, the defense, and she could have been the singular witness to set me free. That's until Mr. Schroeder, my traitor attorney, and the DA police did what they did. They could either kill her or get her to not remember some prime details very well, or bribe or blackmail her to deliberately lie. And I don't think she was that sort of person. So unbelievably, Schroeder refused to interview her at all because he wanted to get out of the way and let the police and the DA work on her memory. Number 7. Let me insert this brief note into the explanation here. Last semester in college here in prison, I took a psychology course. Our textbook was one of the best, most highly rated in the field. There was an excellent, whole, large chapter on how memory works and how false memories can be implanted into the mind of most people, some being more susceptible than others. 8. The evil prosecutor, Mark B. Haynes, and some of the cooperative police, like lead detective Mr. Theron McCarty, were experts with extensive experience at manipulating the memory of multiple witnesses. Joan was an excellent candidate because she was a typical good citizen who always believed the police and were honest, upright civil servants. So here's what happened. 9. I initially forced Schroeder to get a copy of the cassette tapes of supposedly all the taped interviews that Haynes and McCarty and fellow police officers did with Joan. I listened to the tapes repeatedly, and their scams were obvious to me. But Schroeder made me return the tapes to him, and I will forever kick myself for not making a copy. Schroeder returned them to the DA without making a copy himself, as he was too cheap to spend the $1 per tape, or more likely that he didn't have his heart or head in my defense. Instead, Schroeder repeatedly boasted what a great deal he always got from the DA's office because of his cozy relationship with them. Number 10. I had listened to the tapes repeatedly for one day, and here's what they revealed. Initially, Joan honestly and accurately stated over and over that I asked her to call the police, that my voice sounded panicked and very upset, as in a very frightened and even in shock. 11. But as Haynes and McCarty continued to meet with Joan on a regular basis about 2 to 3 weeks apart, as the weeks and months rolled on into nearly 8 months before trial got close, so for example, McCarty would say to Joan, I'm paraphrasing but nearly verbatim, "Now Joan, when you previously told that Lazor sounded very calm on the phone with you," and Joan would say, "I didn't say he sounded calm, not exactly," and McCarty would say, "Oh, okay, not very calm, like not overly calm," and then go on to some other part of the scenario. Then he'd later come back to this and say, "Now you said Lazor wasn't very calm, so he was just somewhat calm," and she'd let that go by because McCarty continued talking without a break, and she'd obviously feel like she shouldn't interrupt. Then a little while later, McCarty would say it again in a more sly way. Now, when Mr. Lazor would, with some calmness in his voice, spoke to you on the phone asking you to please call the police, and Joan would just allow that in. Then the next interview, in a week or two or three later, they'd get to the same subject and just say, "Now, when you previously told that Lazor was very calm as he spoke to you," and Joan would say, "Well, maybe calm, but I'm not so sure, can't be certain if it was very calm." And after another few times of McCarty saying, "Now, Joan, when you previously said," oh, I'm not laughing. It's just, the devil is very, very good with words, ain't he? "Now, Joan, when you previously said Lazor sounded very calm on the phone," and then another few increments of this false memory reinforcement that had been repeating in reply to their questions. Yes, he did sound completely calm, not frightened, and I believe she actually finally came to believe that she must have originally told police and the DA that I sounded completely calm, like it was an everyday thing to conversationally say, "Please call the police," such as you might say in a dining table to your spouse, "Honey, could you pass the potatoes?" when in fact it was an urgent, panicked plea, as when someone is in a dire emergency and says, "Please call the police." Okay, 12. Joan knew that at first, but I think she was actually brain tampered in the way I just described to actually believe she must have initially told the police and the DA that my demeanor was calm, or completely calm, or even very calm. Many clinical memory brain studies show how it works exactly this way, and on adults just as effectively as on children. Let me interject 2 other things about this. 1, I'm a man and not a female. Females most always scream at the top of their lungs when emergencies happen. In contrast, males almost never do. Besides that, I'm much more level-headed than most people, male or female, when emergencies occur. When most or all others present are in a tizzy, all freaked out and unable to function, I'm the one who remains stable in my thinking and action. So that was somewhat in play too. I was both panicked and sharing profusely as the door was being kicked in, yet had a mental rein on myself to where I wasn't screaming hysterically, like one would have been in order for the police DA to have not worked on the witness being interviewed. 13. It actually was much worse than I'm explaining above, as the subtlety, the trickery, the deviousness, the scamming, the suave con artistry, and how the police and the DA to this, they are trained to do it. They also gang up on the interviewee, as they know it puts intimidating pressure on the witness to go along with the interviewers. Small incremental changes when 2, 3, 4 police officers are all together in obvious agreement, each reinforcing, "Yes, you did say that in the previous interviews," when she absolutely did not. 14. Now importantly magnify by manyfold what I just described above, A, for this witness, B, for other subjects with this witness similarly tampered with to move her testimony from point A to point E, which are very, very different, even contradictory statements, and C, to numerous other witnesses. And Schroeder did nothing but help the police DA. Schroeder repeatedly and routinely went out of his way to reinforce the incrementally achieved lie of Miss Harper and the other witnesses by A, likewise getting the witnesses to reconfirm those bent lies on the witness stand against me, and in closing statements and arguments to the jury, Schroeder would repeatedly reinforce those lies to the jury when they were solely damaging to my interest, and he knew they would help send me straight to prison. No possible benefit to me in this whole approach. Schroeder just kept telling me I'm not going to rock the boat with Mark, the DA, by going against him on any of these things. What is a trial then for? He would say, this is my style of defense and I'm very successful at it. A total lie. And we'll get a lot more from the DA to help us by playing ball with them. He often repeated how he had this great special relationship with all of the local police and Mark and the deputy DAs by giving a lot to them. They in turn gave him a lot that other defense attorneys who play hardball with the prosecution and police don't get. Of what? This was an obvious lie because California already had very strong laws in force that required the DA and police to turn everything they had, information, documents, witness names, contact info, and what they knew to the defense. Albeit with Schroeder helping the prosecution, the state illegally withheld all sorts of vital discovery items from us. See my 3552 in regards to my particular circumstances. There was one exception to not have to share it with the defense if the defense stipulates to not arguing it, which Schroeder did often routinely, whatever the DA and police wanted. So stipulate became Schroeder's favorite phrase, meaning agreed on and no need to prove or disprove, a ploy only designed to cuddle up to the prosecution in this case. Second police scam. Another police scam on the same crimes by Los Gatos police and district attorney in my trial. My neighbor, whose house was right behind mine and shared the same driveway to get her house almost right at my back porch, was a victim of dope with 2 little children. She initially told police on tape recorded that she never observed me have any bad interaction with this guy Allred or with anyone else, and that I never said anything negative or indicative of dislike of Allred. But after the DA and police got done with months of the same change the memory into false inflated memories by the same incremental bending of the facts, Donna Fernandez testified against me on the witness stand with bitter, even hateful hostility, making me sound like some sort of evil creep of a neighbor, and particularly stating 180 degrees to her initial emphatic absolute statements to the police on tapes of how I was totally peace-loving, gentle, good neighbor. Now she emphasized to the jury that I stated repeatedly to her that Allred was a very vindictive person, in context that I wanted to retaliate in some way for that. The context was created by the DA and police to the jury. Fernandez was illiterate, and I think she thought vindictive was something else, as she was trying to tell the lie that I was saying somewhat threatening things aimed at Allred. Suddenly the police could not find that tape that had her earlier statements, which completely contradicted this testimony. It just disappeared permanently in the middle of the trial forever. 2. On that tape, it had Fernandez admitting initially the truth that I never said anything whatsoever about Allred or anything negative about anyone else to her ever, and that I was a good, peaceful, very nice, and helpful neighbor, as I did a lot of nice things for her and her children to help a single mother. In light of the fact that Fernandez was a victim of dope and didn't care of her children well at all, my valid speculation is that Haynes and the DA office kept her out of jail on dope charges and having her 2 boys taken in by social services for her negligent and malfeasant rearing of her boys. Of course, any first-year public defender would have exposed this deal and moved for mistrial, or at least striking her as a witness before the damage was done, or motioning to find the tape by the court order. He could have sought to bust the DA police for this ongoing evidence manipulation and witness tampering, subordination of perjury, and would ask Fernandez by charged with perjury for cooperating to frame an innocent man, but Schroeder merely told the jury that they should deem her a hostile witness, and left it at that after weakly examining her on the stand about the discrepancy. I'm sure most jurors or none had no idea what a hostile witness meant. I didn't. Number 3, to top it all off, of course, tightwad, sycophantic Schroeder never made a copy of this tape, only briefly borrowing it from his buddy Mark Haynes, knowing she was safe by evidently being assured by the Los Gatos police that they had destroyed the tape. Fernandez continued to yield to the manufactured lie, which totally contradicted my good character and her earlier testimony on tape. I am sure she was given the same memory adjustment treatment and possible blackmail to influence her attitude. However, her demeanor during court testimony appeared to be fragile, but survived due to Schroeder's weak cross-examination. In all cases, DA means Mark Haynes, the Deputy District Attorney. All right. Hold on. Let's go back to Free Lazor and read the other document as well. Okay, here's the other document. Help needed to locate persons who were witnesses at Lazor's trial. It would be a big help if anyone could locate the following individuals who had some connection to Lazor's trial and conviction. And it could be helpful if they only knew he is still lingering in prison 35 years later. Los Gatos, California, last known location. 1. Joan Gessner Harper, took 911 call. 2. Donna Fernandez, next door neighbor. 3. Harriet Schell, Joan's partner on duty that day. More info on Lazor's case. 1. No one in California history, 1850 to date, has ever been kept in prison like this for so long, who was acquitted of first-degree murder and has zero crime history, and much to the contrary as a stalwart member of his community. 2. 2 independent judges, 10 years apart, independently have researched his case record and stated in court orders that this case was one of apparent genuine self-defense. 3. Lazor was a pillar of his community and had fought against crime all of his adult life. 4. Following his efforts while in prison in 1984 to have his prosecutor arrested and jailed for framing... Let me read that again. 4. Following his efforts while in prison in 1984 to have his prosecutor arrested and jailed for framing him for murder, he began being targeted by prison guards for brutally sexual harassment, violent murder, 33 years of ongoing false misconduct reports, torture, forced drugging like USSR China prisoners, and came close to dying 13 times. It was doubtful if he could be brought back from total starvation and dehydration by his captors and abused in hundreds for other ways like no other prisoner in California history. 5. Other than self-defense shooting, he has never, not once in his life, committed even the slightest act of violence, not even a mildly antisocial nor destructive act against anyone or anything from birth to the present. Number 6. He would have been butchered to death on January the 10th, 1983, had he not acted and shot the rage-filled violent attacker, Allred. 7. His supposed defense attorney, Wesley Schroeder, worked very hard and effectively with his prosecutor and police buddies to frame him and send him to prison. 8. His mandatory release date from prison and his sentence fully served was May 1st, 1992. 9. Maliciously, behind Lazor's back and without his knowledge, in secret hearings, Lazor was not allowed to attend. Schroeder colluded with the prosecutor in the presence of the judge to secretly withdraw all jury instructions of involuntary manslaughter and standard required self-defense justifiable homicide verdict instructions, and totally blacked out all reference to sudden quarrel in or heat of passion on all voluntary manslaughter verdict instructions, thereby removing them from jury consideration whatsoever. This meant that the jury was not allowed to convict him of involuntary nor voluntary manslaughter, 2 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years sentence respectively. Nor were they able to acquit in self-defense without intent to kill. All 3 of these were promised to Lazor that this was the very reason for having a trial, to reduce any sentence. 10. The jury was left with the choice of convicting Lazor for either first or second degree murder. The jury acquitted him of first-degree murder and settled on their only other choice of second-degree murder. Lazor would ask of the dispatchers Joan and Harriet three things. If you would come to know absolutely with 100% certainty of Lazor's innocence after given the truthful facts, A, would you care? B, would you cooperate in doing something about this injustice? 2, I would ask that they go to his website, www.free-lazor.org, and diligently read first the 3552 and thereafter the letters, affidavits, and declarations of support about his character, credibility, life history, and what he did for society, etc. 3, to deeply ponder what it means to have his whole life stolen by this fraudulent farce of a trial. Not only these 35 years since you last saw him, but also his whole future, which now could never come close to being what he had planned for this life. What he had planned for this life. And to consider all he had invested for his future, and now having bypassed all the potential joys and irretrievable experiences of his youth. All was completely and permanently destroyed by this frame-up theft of his entire life. And now the system mercilessly set aside his next parole hearing. Hold on just one second. Oh, shoot. Hold on. For a month, for another 4 long years. Give me just a second. I don't know why it does that. Okay, let's read number 3 again. Let me view, zoom. To deeply ponder what it means to have his whole life stolen by this fraudulent farce of a trial. Not only these 35 years since you last saw him, but also his whole life, his whole future, which now could never come close to being what he planned for this life. And to consider all he had invested for his future, and now having bypassed all the potential joys and irretrievable experiences of his youth. All was completely and permanently destroyed by this frame-up and theft of his entire life. And now the system mercilessly set aside his next parole hearing for, and then for some weird reason it cuts off, for another 4 long years. All right. I pray you keep Free Lazor in your prayers. I pray you write him a letter, let him know you love him and care about him. And Free Lazor is in prison for a self-defense shooting. 35 years. It's absolutely unheard of. There's a lot of innocent men and women in prison in our country. Do you care is the question.